Your brother's future is more important than one wedding ceremony. I stared at my mom's text message for what felt like forever. The words blurred through my tears, but they still hurt the same every time I read them. My wedding was less than 24 hours away. Instead of asking how I was feeling or whether I needed anything, my parents had already made their decision. They were leaving with my older brother, Jason. My name is Emily Carter, and I grew up in Austin, Texas. If you looked at my family from the outside, you'd think we were the perfect American family. My father, Robert Carter, was a senior executive at a Fortune 500 company. My mother, Linda Carter, volunteered at local charities and was known as one of the kindest women in our neighborhood. And then there was Jason, the golden child, the son who could do no wrong. Growing up, everything revolved around him. When Jason wanted to play baseball, my parents spent thousands of dollars traveling across the country for tournaments. When I wanted to attend a summer art program, they told me it was too expensive. When Jason totaled his first car, Dad bought him another one within a week. When my old Honda finally broke down after college, I was told to figure it out. Every sacrifice somehow became my responsibility. Every opportunity somehow belonged to Jason. For years, I convinced myself it didn't matter. I worked hard. I earned scholarships. I graduated without asking my parents for financial help. Built a successful career in marketing and rented my own apartment in downtown Austin. Then, 2 years ago, I met Ethan Brooks. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't rich, but he treated me with a kind of respect I'd never experienced before. He listened. He cared. Most importantly, he never made me feel like I came second. 6 months after we got engaged, we planned a simple wedding. Nothing extravagant, just close friends, family, and a beautiful ceremony at a small, historic church overlooking Lady Bird Lake. My parents promised they'd be there. Mom even helped me choose my wedding dress, or at least, I thought she cared. 3 days before the wedding, Jason burst into my parents' house with exciting news. I got invited to pitch my startup to investors in New York. Everyone started cheering. Dad hugged him. Mom cried tears of joy. "The meeting is on Saturday morning," Jason said. Saturday, the exact morning of my wedding. I laughed nervously. "Well, you'll have to catch a later flight." Nobody laughed. Dad looked at Jason, then at Mom. Finally, he looked at me. "I think your brother should take this opportunity." I frowned. "What does that have to do with my wedding?" Mom sighed. "The investors can't reschedule." I stared at them. "So, what are you saying?" Silence. Then Dad finally spoke. "We're going with Jason." I honestly thought he was joking. "You mean after the ceremony?" "No." "Before the ceremony?" "No." "We're missing the wedding." My heart dropped. "You can't be serious." Mom reached for my hand. "Emily, sweetheart, you'll understand someday." I slowly pulled my hand away. "No, I don't think I ever will." That night, I barely slept. The next morning, I received the text message that broke whatever hope I still had. "Your brother's future is more important than one wedding ceremony." That was it. No apology, no explanation, just a decision. The following morning, I watched from my apartment window as my parents loaded their suitcases into Dad's SUV. Jason hugged them. They laughed. Then they drove away. Not one of them looked back. The church looked beautiful. White roses lined the aisle. Soft piano music echoed through the room. Friends smiled as they took their seats. But I couldn't stop looking at the 2 empty chairs in the front row, the seats reserved for my parents. Everyone noticed. Nobody said anything. Ethan gently squeezed my hand. "They're missing the biggest day of your life." I nodded. "I know." He smiled softly. "But I won't." The music began. The church doors opened. I took a deep breath. Instead of walking toward the life I thought I'd have, I walked toward the life I chose to build for myself. The ceremony was beautiful. People laughed. People cried. For a few hours, I forgot about the empty chairs. One of Ethan's friends recorded parts of the ceremony and posted a short highlight video on TikTok. Neither of us thought much about it. We left for a quiet honeymoon weekend in the Texas Hill Country. By Monday morning, that video had over 1 million views. Thousands of strangers were asking the exact same question: why are the bride's parents missing? We had no idea that one simple question was about to destroy the perfect image my parents had spent decades building. Our honeymoon lasted only 3 days. Ethan and I rented a cozy cabin in the Texas Hill Country, far away from our phones, social media, and the stress of the wedding. For the first time in years, I felt peaceful. Then Monday morning arrived. As soon as we checked into our hotel Wi-Fi, my phone exploded with notifications. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, missed calls, text messages, everything was flooded. I looked at Ethan in confusion. What happened? He opened TikTok and froze. Babe, he slowly turned the screen toward me. Our wedding video had over 1.3 million views. The comments were coming in faster than either of us could read them. Why are the bride's parents missing? Those 2 empty chairs broke my heart. No daughter deserves this. Someone please tell me this isn't real. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. One short video had turned into a national conversation. The account that posted it had only a few thousand followers. Now it had hundreds of thousands. News pages had started sharing the clip. Even popular family influencers were reacting to it. None of them knew my name, but somehow they all understood my pain. That afternoon, my phone rang. Mom. I stared at the screen for several seconds before answering. Hello? She didn't even say congratulations. She didn't ask about the honeymoon. Instead, she shouted, "Emily, what have you done?" I frowned. What are you talking about? You embarrassed this family. Took a slow breath. I didn't post the video. But you're letting people believe we're terrible parents. I looked out the hotel window. Mom, I never asked anyone to attack you. Then tell them the truth. I already have. Silence. The truth is, you weren't there. She hung up. 2 days later, Dad called. His voice sounded completely different. Quiet, exhausted. Emily. Yes? My CEO wants to see me tomorrow morning. I didn't respond. He saw the video. Another long silence. He wants an explanation. I hope you give him an honest one. Dad didn't answer. The next afternoon, my cousin Rachel called. You'll never believe what happened. What? My husband works at your dad's company. I sat up. What happened? The CEO played your wedding video during a leadership meeting. I couldn't believe it. Rachel continued. He asked your father one question. Is this video accurate? Dad apparently looked down at the table and quietly answered, yes. The room went completely silent. The CEO finally spoke. We tell every employee that family comes first. If our senior leaders don't believe that themselves, how can they expect anyone else to? No one defended my father. No one could. Things got even worse. Jason's investor meeting in New York had been a disaster. The startup didn't receive funding. The trip my parents chose over my wedding had accomplished nothing. For the first time in his life, Jason realized that their sacrifice had been completely meaningless. He called me that evening. I don't know why I'm calling. Then why did you? He paused. I think I've spent my whole life letting Mom and Dad choose me over you. I stayed quiet. I should have told them not to come with me. Yes, I know. His voice cracked. I'm sorry, Em. It was the first sincere apology I'd ever heard from my brother. By the end of the week, television stations wanted interviews. Podcasts wanted to hear my story. Women's organizations reached out with messages of support. But I turned them all down. I didn't want fame. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted peace. Unfortunately, life had one more surprise waiting for me. The following Saturday, someone knocked on our front door. When I opened it, my parents were standing there. Neither of them looked like the confident people I had known my entire life. Mom's eyes were swollen from crying. Dad looked 10 years older. In his hands was a small wooden box. Without saying a word, he handed it to me. It belonged to Grandma Margaret. I slowly opened it. Inside was her pearl necklace, a faded family photograph, and a sealed envelope. Written across the front, in my grandmother's handwriting, were just 6 words. To Emily, open this when you're ready. I looked up at my father, his eyes filled with tears. He whispered, "There's something your grandmother wanted you to know." I held the envelope in my shaking hands. Whatever was inside, it had remained hidden for more than 20 years, and somehow I knew my life was about to change forever. Stared at the email from the media company for several long moments. I had never dreamed of becoming famous. All I ever wanted was a peaceful life. But now, my story had reached millions of people across the country. Ethan gently placed a hand on my shoulder. "If you don't want to do the interview, then don't. No one has the right to pressure you into it." I took a deep breath. "I'm not trying to get revenge, Ethan. I just don't want another daughter to go through the kind of pain I lived with." A few days later, my interview aired nationwide. I didn't insult my parents. I didn't try to humiliate them. I simply told the truth. Ever since I was a little girl, my parents always chose my brother over me. On my wedding day, they made that same choice again. I don't hate them, but that day taught me something important. Sometimes the family you build is stronger than the family you're born into. My words touched millions of hearts. Within days, the interview had gone viral across the United States. Universities invited me to speak. Women's organizations reached out with messages of support. My company promoted me to lead a major national project. While my life was moving forward, my parents' world was falling apart. My father was removed from his executive leadership position. He wasn't fired, but his reputation inside the company was permanently damaged. Relatives, friends, neighbors, everyone kept asking the same question. Why weren't you at your daughter's wedding? No matter how many times they were asked, they never had an answer. One evening, the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, my father was standing there. For the first time in my life, he didn't look strong. He looked broken. In his hands was an old wooden box. Without saying a word, he held it out to me. "This belonged to your grandmother. She wanted you to have it on your wedding day." I carefully opened the box. Inside was a beautiful pearl necklace, several old family photographs, and a sealed envelope. Across the front, written in my grandmother's elegant handwriting, were the words, "For Emily's eyes only." My hands began to shake. I slowly opened the letter. Grandma Margaret had written, "Emily, if you're reading this, it means my greatest wish never came true. I always knew you were being overlooked, but I also knew that one day the truth would finally come to light. There is something I have kept hidden for many years, a secret that could change your entire life." My heart began pounding. I kept reading. Then suddenly, I stopped breathing. There was a name written in the letter. It wasn't my father's name. I slowly looked up at him. Tears rolled down his face. He spoke so quietly I could barely hear him. "I know. Now you're going to learn everything." The room fell into complete silence. My eyes returned to the letter. The next sentence began, "The man you've believed was your father all these years?" Before I could finish reading, the doorbell rang again. Ethan walked to the front door and opened it. Outside, a black luxury sedan was parked in the driveway. An elderly, well-dressed man stepped out. He looked directly into my eyes and said in a calm voice, "Emily, we need to talk. I know the truth about your past, the truth that has been hidden from you your entire life." The letter slipped from my trembling hands and fell silently onto the floor. The letter slipped from my hands and landed on the floor. The room fell completely silent. My father slowly bent down, picked it up, and gently placed it back into my trembling hands. In a quiet voice, he said, "Emily, finish reading the letter. Today, you're finally going to learn the truth about your past, the truth we've hidden from you for years." My hands were shaking as I unfolded the letter again. Grandma Margaret had written, "Emily, if you're reading this, your heart has probably been broken once again. But I want you to understand something. The greatest tragedy in your life wasn't that your parents overlooked you. It was that they carried the weight of one terrible decision for so many years that they never found the courage to tell you the truth." I slowly looked up at my father, confused. Then I continued reading. "When you were only 6 years old, you became seriously ill. Your medical treatments cost thousands of dollars, and your parents found themselves buried in debt. During that same time, your brother Jason showed extraordinary academic talent and was accepted into a prestigious educational program, one they believed could change the future of your entire family." Swallowed hard. The next paragraph hurt even more. "That was the day your parents made the biggest mistake of their lives. They convinced themselves that if they invested every opportunity, every resource, and every ounce of attention into Jason, one day he would be successful enough to take care of everyone. Little by little, they stopped noticing how deeply they were hurting you." Tears rolled down my cheeks. I had never looked at my childhood from that perspective before. I kept reading. "Emily, your parents were never evil people. They were simply trapped inside a decision they believed was right. Every year they promised themselves they would make things up to you the next time, but somehow that next time never came." By the time I reached the final paragraph, my hands were trembling. "If one day your parents ask for your forgiveness, the choice will always be yours. But remember this, forgiveness isn't a gift you give someone else. It's the freedom you give your own heart." I slowly folded the letter. No one in the room said a word. For the first time in my life, I saw my father crying. His voice cracked as he spoke. "Your grandmother gave us that letter years ago. She told us that if we ever failed to recognize our mistakes, we were to give it to you. I'm ashamed to admit, it took us 25 years to understand what we had done." My mother could no longer hold back her tears. She knelt in front of me. "Emily, we know we don't deserve your love anymore. But if there's even the smallest place left for us in your life, please give us one more chance." Looked at Ethan. He smiled gently and said only one sentence. "Make the decision that will let you sleep peacefully tonight." I stood there in silence for several moments. Then I walked over to my parents and helped them to their feet. I can't change the past, but I also refuse to let hatred decide my future. My father wrapped his arms around me and began to cry. It was the very first hug we'd ever shared without pain, without pride, without favoritism, just love. A few months later, our family gathered for a small dinner at our home in Austin. This time, my parents were the very first to arrive. During the evening, my mother stood up in front of everyone. With tears in her eyes, she said, "Today, our daughter is the greatest success in this family, not because she became famous, but because she taught us a lesson we should have learned years ago. Favoring one child over another isn't just a mistake, it's a decision that can break an entire family." I smiled and reached for Ethan's hand. In that moment, I realized something I would never forget. You can't rewrite your past, but you can choose the future you're willing to create. That day, I forgave my parents. But I also made them one promise. If I ever see a child in this family being treated unfairly, whether it's a son or a daughter, I will be the first person to speak up. My father lowered his head and smiled through his tears. When that day comes, we'll know that our daughter grew into someone far stronger than we ever were. As I looked around the room that evening, I realized something that had never been true before. For the first time in many years, we weren't just living under the same family name. We had finally become a real family.